Welcome back, amazing parents. And we are in our series, Fearless First Parents. And I promise that the rest of these videos won't be as long as the last one. I really should have divided that up into 2 videos. And because it was getting so long, I kind of cut it off. So I want to, in this video, just kind of recap and conclude that first video properly. So in the last video, we talked about how the knowledge of good and evil, or teaching our children right and wrong, is not the goal of parenting, and how that is the same knowledge or the fruit of the tree that separated Adam and Eve from God and the entire human race. And so what I want to just share in this video, let me get my notes here, is a little bit more about why that is so. So teaching right and wrong, the knowledge of good and evil, that's the law. The law was given to define sin. We read that in Romans. So the knowledge of right and wrong is what the law brought. Paul said before the law that sin didn't exist because sin hadn't been defined. So that's why knowing right and wrong feeds and awakens our sin nature, because now we have this knowledge of, oh, this is right and this is wrong. Well, we know also that the law was given to make us guilty before God. So when we teach our children right and wrong, we're actually bringing them under condemnation and making them guilty before God, because no one can live up to the standard of the law. It was never given as a means of salvation or a means of being made righteous before God. Okay, so we're setting a standard that they can't reach. We're setting them up for failure. All right, and the reason that the law failed is because it addressed the flesh, the external behavior. And it says that it was weak because of the flesh, because we cannot behave our way into good graces with God. We can't address the flesh through the flesh. And so the law has no ability to change the heart or address the heart. And we know that the heart is what matters to God. We're not judged on our behavior. We're judged on our heart. Okay. God looks at the heart. Man looks at the outward appearances, right? So, and then we also know that the law, it's in Romans, tells us clearly, and Galatians, leads to death. And so Romans 8, that those who follow after the flesh or the law, it leads to death. And so, and that's the spiritual death we talked about. It's a separation from God, because now we're operating in our own understanding. So I don't want to get too far into this. I know we're talking about parenting, but I just want you to understand why that approach to parenting is so deadly, and why the teaching our kids right and wrong is not the goal of parenting. So now that begs the question, if we don't teach our kids right and wrong, what then do we teach them? What is it we're supposed to do as parents? And that's what we want to talk about in this course. So I got the heavy stuff out of the way, and now I'm going to give you some amazing tools to be able to just really create the child of your dreams. It's very powerful. So what do we want to do? Well, in the middle of the garden, there were 2 trees. There was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which God told them not to eat from. And then there was the tree of life, which sat there all along, offering its life-giving fruit. And Adam and Eve had freedom to eat from that tree. We don't know if they ever did, but we know after they ate from the knowledge of good and evil, God put them out of the garden, and not to punish them, but to protect them, because it says, if you go back and read it, he said, we can't let them now eat from the tree of life and live forever in this fallen state. So he put them out to protect them from that fate. And anyway, so just want to bring that up. So when we want to feed our kids from the tree of life, how do we do that? That's what we're going to learn in this series. But just to give you an overview, the tree of life creates our spiritual identity, because it represents who we were intended to be from the beginning. It represents everything that Jesus came to restore. He said he was the tree of life. And so just like we created our children physically, right? We co-labored with God to create a physical human being. We provided the physical sperm and egg to create a body, and God breathed life into it to create the physical being of our child. Well, we also have to create their spiritual being. And that's what we have not been taught how to do. And when you do that, it's extremely powerful because we live from our spirit, whatever is in there, from the inside out. And God always works from the inside out because he knows that whatever is on the inside of us will ultimately guide how we live. And so we have to co-labor with God now to create that spiritual nature, to define it and to draw it out. So God is already, before your child showed up on earth, we know that God has already written all the days of our lives in his books. It tells us that in the scriptures that David says, all the days of my life you saw them before there was one of them. And then I think it's in Ephesians where it says that he created us for works that were prepared for us from before the foundations of the world. So when we show up, there's already a script in heaven written for us to live out. And that's our spiritual identity. That's our true identity. And that's what you, as a parent, that is your primary goal, is to discover that, to define it, and to draw it out of your child so that he can live from his true spiritual identity all the days of his life. And I'll give you a little spoiler alert. The easiest time to do that is when they're little bitty, because we've always thought these early years, well, they're just little, they can't understand anything, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that's true. They can't understand anything up here, but their spirits are wide open. And so in the next video, we're going to talk more about that. But I just want to kind of finish this thought. So God has already given them their spiritual DNA. It's in there, but we have to awaken it, and we have to feed that spiritual identity. But what we've been doing is feeding their carnal or their sin nature, because we've been feeding them that poison fruit, the knowledge of good and evil that aroused the sin nature in the beginning. And so, if you remember, Adam and Eve's spirits, died when they ate that fruit, because God said, in the day you eat of it, you will die. And we know something died that day because the way they saw everything completely changed. And so because they were looking now not through their spiritual eyes, which they had previously been doing, but through their natural or human understanding. So our children's spirits are in there, but they're dormant because of the fall. So we all died in Adam. We all spiritually died in Adam. And so we have to now awaken their spirit. Jesus said you have to be born again, that your spirit had to be reborn because it died in the garden. And that's what we have to co-labor with God to do that. And it's so, so simple, you won't believe it. And God has literally rigged it in our favor. The way that he has designed children has made it so easy to do that it's so much easier than trying to teach them right and wrong, which is failing. It fails us, it fails our children, and it fails the church because we're losing our children. And so when you learn to parent the way God designed it, it is so simple and effective, you just won't even believe it. And in the next video, we're going to get into how do I create my child's spiritual identity or his spirit? How do I awaken his spirit and help define his spiritual identity so he can live out of that all the days of his life? So I can't wait to get started on that. And I'm excited, as you can tell. So until then, take care and God bless. I'll see you in the next video.